Thank you to everyone who's here. We're going to start the conversation now between artist Mella Jaarsma and curator Vipash Purichanont about the size of rice, which is our current exhibition. So I guess we'll start with the question, what is the curatorial concept behind the exhibition, Vipash?
All right. Well, so hi everyone. First, good to be here. I think maybe I'll talk a little bit more about like how the collaboration happened, and then maybe walk everyone through the way we develop the concept of the exhibition. So myself and Mella know each other from maybe 2012 or 14 when we travel the exhibition concept context contestation that organized by Bangkok Art and Cultural Center to Yogyakarta to Jamaica. And after that, so we kind of worked together a little bit. But then the first time that we worked together a lot, and I was her curator for the Thailand Biennale in Krabi in 2018. So that's about like three years ago. And then after that, Joshua approached us and then said maybe we can have an exhibition together. So during that time in 2018, Mela was doing we did a project together in Krabi as part of the Biennale. And then, of course, Mela was doing a costume working with communities. But then we sort of like joking that maybe next time we do something else, like not the costume or something like that. So 2008 to 2012, this should be the time that we should have this exhibition. The pandemic broke, the first wave of the pandemic broke out. We postponed it to this one, and then for this time we were like, okay, no, we should do it. And that was a conversation like 3 months ago. So we kind of came together, and then one thing that we was interested, I think, together was to think about maybe not the practice of the costume per se, but the idea of measurement that I myself have been interested in. But then we found, through the discussion, I found that Mela also interested in as well, through her practice, especially in, she will explain, I think, later on, but I think I'll just explain from my side first, because I think I was interested in how people ontologically live the world differently. And I think one thing that I have been drawn to, this is especially with my work in Singapore Biennale 2019 as well, was about the sense of the magic, the way that people approach the world differently because the world appears to them differently. And then I was so interested in that kind of idea, especially in Southeast Asia. So we decided that we going to have some sort of kind of conversation plus research, share research about measurement. And Mela sent me like a list of like what's her research in Indonesia. I share what I have thought about in Thailand. And then one thing that I was very interested in was that I kind of find out that there was like, in terms of measurements, one thing that's so important for measurements is the sense of you need to agree with one another. Measurements comes with agreements or certain kind of agreements that, okay, we're gonna think about this thing this way. We're gonna measure this thing this way. And then in that, then we can do a lot of things after the measurement, especially with exchange. And then as Amina just shows, I think this is what I found out, especially in the system of measurement in Thailand before the metrics came in 19th century, was the system of measurements based on rice and hands. So we were start questioning like why it was like, you know, between rice and hands, why it's so important, why it's the interesting thing about the site the combination between rice and hands is that I found that it's not only measurement of quantity, it's also measurement of wage, it's also measurement of a lot of things. But more importantly, it's like it's a combination where it's kind of gesture. It signifies just some kind of gesture as well. So it's also, you know, signifying not only just the size of rice, but how the hands hold the rice. And that seemed to be something that not only originated in Thailand, but also other places around the world where, you know, we consume rice, and also in Indonesia. So the term, at first we kind of like our first term of in terms of the measurement was to think about everything as this combination between rice and hands. And after that, Mela kind of take this concept and expand it within the context that she works, especially in Indonesia. And then that's also how I think she carried it on to work with other performers, which I think Mela can explain about it later. But this is basically the starting point of the exhibition and the title Size of Rice.
So what were the exchange of ideas on from Mella's perspective?
I tell?
What were the
Yes.
exchange of
Yeah,
ideas?
yeah. Yeah, so I already doing some research on this idea of measurement in Indonesia, and also related to more like Hindu concepts, because especially in Bali, they have a very strong up to today way of how to build something. So it's very much related to architecture. So not only to measurements of, let's say, rice, or how to measure livestock, for example, but and how to relate to daily, this kind of how do you say it, agreements between people, how to come to this kind of agreements. But I was very much obsessed with, or not obsessed, but very much inspired by the Balinese theory about measurements, and it's called Asta Kosala Kosali. So in 2019, I have traveled to Bali again to do some research on that and meet some architects. Those architects are called Undagi. So they really start from body measurements and then translate that into structures, constructions, but also floor patterns. Also relates to rules, what to carry on your head or not, for example. So I'm just very interested into this kind of material, and it inspired me a lot to think again about the body measurement and how to extend things out of the body into the world around us. And the other side, how do we compare ourselves with the world around us, and how do we create those measurements related to the world around us? And of course, it's very much related to agricultural things. So in that sense, it's very interesting again to also to get those information from Vipash related to the rice. For example, if you see those, so if you saw this image from Vipash that you showed before, the way how people pick a rice, one grain of rice, is also very much related to how for example, the dance is developed in Thailand and Indonesia and things like that. So yeah, my ideas with this, with all the discussion that we had with Vipash about measurement, I got the idea like I really have to work with other people to explore this idea, people who are used to work with their body. And then also the idea that how those body parts or body measurements, then how can I translate it in an object? So that was the next step actually. So how those ideas of measuring something is related to cultural backgrounds and cultural agreements. So in that sense, it's very interesting that I started first, I asked Abdi Karya, who is a dancer, who's also here in this in the webinar. Hello, Abdi, can you introduce yourself? Abdi, hi.
Hi, hello.
Hi.
Greetings from Jogja. Yeah. How can I turn on my video? Okay, I just stopped. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Mella, and Vipash for putting us on this interesting process. And for me, I think our fellow other performers also are coming. We are four. Mella has invited 4 performers from theater and dance background. So they are Siska, Ari, Febri, including myself. And then it's interesting to see how, and Inyong. And it's interesting to see how we talk the same thing from different experience, different point of view. For example, some of us has a strong traditional experiences, like growing up in a village where the society still practice the like what Mella and Vipas said, people cooking rice and then they measure with their hand, and then people building a house and they measure with part of body, and then also in the other hand, like Inyong, who say that I don't have experience with strong traditional measurement, but I could associate myself with the thing that I can found from my own self. Let's say I found a way to measure my body from how many steps or how many palms of the feet that I have, or how many, how do you say, berapa jengkal, how many berapa jengkal, how many
footsteps, or foot measurements.
Foot measurement, foot measurement or hand measurement to measure my body. Or one of the challenging part is about time, which is done by Febri. So interesting things when he said time is like the most difficult one to measure, but it's also the easiest one to see. So he shared his experience, his grandpa's experience. So one of the way to measure time is if you want to go from one village to other village, just measure from satu batang rokok.
One cigarette. So
one cigarette.
One cigarette.
Yes.
Yeah, so something like that. So that's interesting how from different point of view and different body experience talk about measurements which offered by Mella, something like that.
Yeah, so we had many discussions with the 4 dancers. Every week we come together, and so from there on, everybody, all the dancers pick up one issue related to measurement. So Abdi choose to relate it to size, length. And his ideas were related to house constructions and how in Makassar, he's from South Sulawesi, how measurements from the body still relate to building houses. The depth, the width, the height, everything is related to the people living in the house. And interesting thing in that area is not like in Bali, which always starts from the head of the family, which is man, But in Makassar or in South Sulawesi, also some measurements of the women were involved. So, so one of the costumes or the objects that I created for Abdi relates to the size between the length between the two nipples of his wife, for example. So I think it's very interesting. So yeah, please.
Yeah, just to add, I think the term, the sense of like relationship between objects and the measurement is very interesting, because when we start the research, we found that from hands, Mela was talking about hands, gesture in the dance, but then from hands, after the hand becomes the measurements, in terms of the measurements, in terms of the unit, become objects. So what very common between Thailand and Indonesia was like we measurize using the coconut shells.
Yeah.
So that's also why I was like, maybe that's also another question, something that we can work together in terms of the idea of making the artwork, making the object, which is also a costume. But then I also say it's kind of like wearable, some kind of equipment. But Mela will talk about it after that, I think. But it's very, very important to just draw you to this connection as well between the measurements, the hand gesture, and then trust the object that's expanding from coconut shells to even a architecture building to host rice.
Yeah, so that was also my intention from the beginning, just the idea that I create something for each dancer, but really relates to their body proportions. So in the sense that it's really the idea with this, like the Asta Kosala Kosali, the Balinese idea as well, that you start from a body part, body parts, and then you extend it into this object. So my intention was to create a specific object for each dancer, and then give that object back to the dancer, and then the dancer creates a performance with it. So that was the idea. So Abdi, I created an object related to length. So he chose some parts of his body related to length, which were important for him. So one was from the chin, for example, to the middle, how do you call it? Middle rib, middle, how do you call it? Middle chest, and some other ones. And then, sorry, Siska, she's from Padang, from Sumatra, where weight is very important. So for example, when she got married, she had to carry like 15 kilos of gold on her head. So for her, weight was very important, and I created this weight object for her. And then Abdi, who is more like a theater performer, and this idea of blocking, and so not only footsteps, what were important for him, but also like how far can you look if you're standing in one position, the idea of the view. And he chose to have like a sort of interspace or distance, to think about distance. So, and then the other one is Febri, and Febri was the one who explored time. Yeah, also because he had the stories with those cigarettes, and so so yeah, it's very interesting. What else can I say? Maybe it's interesting to show a video now of one of the dancers. Maybe start with number 1. There is no sound with the video, so we can talk a bit also if we need to.
So what was the process like for making of this video?
Yeah, so this is the Abdi, and this is about length. And Yeah, his sort of most important words were construction and flexible constructions related to earthquakes. And for example, he also chose one measurement like the size between the nipples of his wife, which relate to the height of the house. And yeah, the feminine, the masculine. And that's also why we choose this site to have it in front of this old Japanese house. What I did, I just gave back the objects to the dancers. We did not do any rehearsals. So I just gave them the site and then put them with the object. And then they just, I just told them, just remember all our discussions we had. And then they just created this performance.
Yeah. And the video, was it done in one take?
No, it's, yeah, yeah, it was, we just did a lot of video shots, but then of course the editing is also my work too. So I really edit it into a short version with the most important parts for my feeling related to the movement, the sizes, and then the dancer as well, and the measurements. But somehow mostly expressed our ideas.
Since the dancers are here, I guess I wanted to ask, what was it like to receive the object and have no choreography and then kind of work out these expressions, these discussions?
Yeah, maybe Ari or Siska or Febri also can add, but for me, it's important for us to when Mella hand over the objects, it's important for us to see it as an empty stage where it's like a improvisation space where you can play whatever you want. But the idea already there, the idea already settled, like our weekly discussions. We have a lot of sharings about how we see time, how we perceive the measurement. Playing the objects, like Mela said, there is absolutely no rehearsal, but we just try to make sure. So, the joints, to make it sure how to make it move smoothly, or by the end, during the shooting, we find there's of course some difficulties, some stacks, but that's from our point of view as a performer, as a dancer and actors, we see it as a potential things to be explored further.
Okay.
Yeah, somehow you have to deal with tension between to play or to be or to show. So that's space also, that gap also interesting to see. Either I'm playing the costume, or I become the costume, or I play the object, or I am the object. So something like that.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Can we talk about, Mela, the paintings that started the process of thinking about the object? So maybe we'll start with the Undagi series. I will share my screen again.
Yeah, for me, making drawings is always a very important part of the project, of the process. And also, while we had all those discussions, I was sort of searching and this idea, okay, how can we translate all those measurements into something what relates to them, and then becomes very specific as well at the same time. Yeah, so, and how this object then can be moved into the space and relates to, yeah, our structure and our surroundings. So I always make a lot of drawings. And this is a series I made. It's called Undaki. So that's this Balinese architect. Yeah, so it's just like sort of spontaneously trying out some, how would things work in the space, probably the idea like shadow also, especially in this series. I also have sort of the imaginary and then the physical and then something which is moving, which is the body. So how does this all come together? So I call this series the Ondagi. And it becomes almost like a shield here, but then also maybe, yeah, it's like a sort of tryout, you know. I make this kind of drawings more also like a maquette, or how do you call it? Like, yeah, something how to imaginary the thing in real, in the physical space. And that's also why I create bigger paintings, because for me to, it's also try out to have something in the physical space in real size, because as a public also you're standing in front of it and you try to, you sort of can imagine that you're in that space. So this physical appearance, and then this related to distance. And I think also very much the works also still relate to the idea of this COVID period, and where measurements and distance become so important. So on one hand, we're very much in the digital era and everything is sort of offline and immaterial. On the other hand, we very much live in a material world. We cannot get rid of that, and we also need that. So I think this is always interesting also to think with these ideas. And yeah, that's also what's happening in two-dimensional work. So it's an imaginary world you create, and then in the same time, I try to bring in the physical thing. So yeah, I think, and then also how it relates again to the videos, and that's why I think it's, my work is never enough for me to have only the 2-dimension. I need to go to the 3-dimension, and that's also why I always like to work with costumes, where you have the physical appearance of the viewer who's standing in front of it, as well of the one who wears it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then it's all again about the human proportions.
Okay, great. Vipash, do you want to talk about how you curated, I guess, the selection of the size of these paintings and the positioning of them?
So I think one thing that interesting to share is that the way that we work is it's kind of center towards, like the center is Mella. So every week we have kind of like every week we have like kind of meeting, but then you know, because of the COVID and everything, I think she meet with the dancers. So you know, in the morning of Saturday, and you know, every week, and then I sort of like coming to check with her like in the evening or in the afternoon every week. So it's nice to see all of you here finally, because I think we are kind of like, you know, being separated but somehow linked by Mella. At the same time, so it's kind of important to let Mella work kind of freely in terms of, like, you know, the sketch and then also the work. So I got to see all the work kind of later on in the process. So I got to see some sketches a few times, and then after that, you know, the whole thing, including the painting, but not the performance. And then I started to put things together, I think. Rather than seeing it this way, maybe it's important to just, you know, see the installation view, which I mean, I already take the view of the exhibition. the principle of, you know, trying to put things together in the space is very simple, I think. What I was missing was more like, because of, you know, all the limitation that we have, especially like curator was in another countries in cannot travel, artist was in another country and then she cannot travel, and then the, you know, the gallery is in another country. Even though we are so close, we can basically link together, we can't travel. So it's important for me to kind of imagine what should be shown and then how can we show it. So I came up with the idea that sin is a measurement, and then somehow everything come out of the body. It's important that it's almost like this project, the measurement somehow derived from the body. So the most important thing is to imagine the body in the exhibition. So I want to see, I want to imagine, I want to see the, you know, people standing around in the exhibitions. And then that's come the idea of trying to understand each of the painting, how of the painting and the sketch, and then trying to make it into series, trying to make them gather, make them stand together in the groups. Trust has become, you know, exhibition where we have quite a lot of standing figure in standing around in the space, but also, you know, far away in the drawing, but then also next to you as a kind of costume or objects, and also a painting. What's very interesting is, like, I think myself and Mella have a similar take on the painting. So we were like, yeah, the painting shouldn't be, you know, like, hang in a certain measurement or certain degree as like we are seeing the painting, but we should look at all the painting from the perspective that we are standing with the painting. Yeah, so that's one of the interesting thing that came out in the installations. Similarly, I think the same principles happen with all the objects. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's why in the installation, everything is quite lower than usual, so that it feels like
Yes.
the body is around us. And I thought that was really interesting and very much part of the exhibition. Mella, could you share with us the specific measurements that were, you know, that we can see in the Kosala Kosali series, so the bigger paintings in the exhibition? Maybe we can start with this one.
Yeah, this one is a sort of series in between, because last year I made a whole series about horizontal dresses. The idea, yeah, normally we're always vertical, but yeah, also with the idea of the mortality that we're dealing with. And then also the idea of growing. So the vertical, the horizontal, and then, so in the end, I just added those rice plants on it. So with different stages of growth. So the small plants until the big plants, until they are having the rice on it, the rice grains. Yeah, and I think this also came out of the discussion where they had with the dancers, that I finally did, yeah, because this idea of the discussion we had with Febri, the dancer who explored about time. And for him, growing or growth is so much related to time, and also, yeah, related to crawling, for example, and from small to big, and then also from big to small again. So yeah, then I finally decided, okay, I just glue this rice plants on top of the painting. And it also becomes like a carrier. So many of the works are a sort of carrier. So you carry something. So it's never sort of stagnant, you know, you're moving. So that's also like, it's between a bag, it's between a costume, is between an object or an attribute. I call it more like attributes actually now. The things that I created for the dancers.
I see.
That's with this one, and the other one, like this one. Yeah, this is very much related to this idea of the Kosala Kosali and the idea how the Balinese create temple complexes, but also kitchens. And so what is the difference? How many steps? What is the height, for example, of if you enter a temple, it has to be at least that you have to go onto several steps as high as your navel. So the temple complex starts at the height of your navel, but the kitchen can start as high on your knees, for example. So I just very intrigued by this kind of ideas that people create around body parts, and then how it relates to philosophical or even somehow, almost religious ideas. Macrocosmos, microcosmos, and so on. So, but all starting from the body. So this is sort of translated in this painting, and also like how wide can you, what is your expansion? So, and then this sort of half circles. I started to work with this form because this idea that we create this kind of object sometimes related. So, for example, if you create a pillar in Bali, the pillar for the ballet, for some house constructions, it starts from this measurement, from the tip of your point finger and until your thumb. So this size, and then 21 times is the height of a pillar, for example. But then they add like the size, the width of one pink, they add with the idea that they give life. We call it urip in Indonesia. So we add some life to the construction. So then that's the measure of one pink size. So all these kind of ideas, I just love to read about this kind of things and then somehow translate that into the paintings and the drawings. This one also. So you.
We were talking about the width of the pinky to
exactly. This is very important size. Yes.
And then you mentioned about these moments of spontaneity within the paintings as well, like these splatters and what that represents in contrast.
Yeah, I sort of brought all the discussions with the dancers sort of are reflected in the painting somehow. For example, if you look at this painting, this is much related to this idea of Abdi and this idea like that you create a house, the height of the house related, or how many times you use the size between nipples of the women in the house. I think this is just very interesting. So this is sort of translated into this work. On the other hand, if you look at the lower part, it's related to the performance created by Inyong or Ari Dwianto. And this idea of steps and interspace and how far can you reach, and then also relates again to, for example, the site that I choose for him in the rice field. How far can you reach to plant rice plants, for example? And what has to be the measurement in between the rice plants to grow well?
Yeah,
so you can see the video of Ari. Yeah.
So it's interesting how each stage of the creation process is kind of seen in the exhibition, from the initial sketches to the paintings to what we're probably going to talk about next, the later sketches, and then how that moved on from the later sketches to finding the objects and then the video. So I'm going to pull up the sketches now, or the later paintings. So this series, and wanted to ask why you chose to put natural materials into these paintings or drawings.
Yeah, I was intrigued by making collage to do something physical on the imaginary, which is just creating space in a two-dimensional thing, like working on paper. So it's just sort of try out just this idea like, okay, because then you have like the natural color, the natural shape. Of course, this proportion is then very strange because you have the real rice plants, and then you work on a sketch, which is actually sort of imaginary human body, but it's not a real proportion. So always something happens there, and then I don't know. This is just for me to try out forms, to find forms. This was just I created just before I finished the attribute that I created for Apti. So yeah, it's just like I think this is the whole exhibition also like it's sort of part of the process, a process that is not yet finished actually. So for the art in Jakarta that's happening in July, we're going to make it the size of rice #2 to make the next project. So I will show the videos there together with some of the drawings, but then the dancers also. I will ask this time to the dancers to really create a choreography, not with these objects, but after all the discussions that they had, and then they can ask me to create an object what they think is necessary to add to their performance. So we reverse the process in a sense. So I think it's very interesting to see what comes out of that. So yeah, I think it's just sort of create an awareness about what we hold, what we keep, what we look at, who we are, and how do we move. And it's just yeah, this kind of process is just interesting and fascinating for me, I think. And yeah, so this process also sort of sharing about this whole ideas, and then also the discussion I had with Vipash, and also how that sort of relates to very cultural ideas or cultural backgrounds, but in the same time, it's also very universal because we all have the same sort of bodies, right? So, and we live in a surrounding where we have to move around. So,
Yeah. And what about these the smaller markups in relation to the painting?
yeah. So why I'm doing this kind of gouaches and collage, then I'm also trying to sort of design in the same time, design the object that I have to create for the dancer. So then I sort of translate this gouache again into this small. Can you go back to the last drawing, or to this one? So then I translate again these forms that came out of this gouache into a sort of design object. So that's why I make this small figure on the side to sort of simplify again the gouache that I created.
Yeah. And I guess out of that, you get the actual object itself.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I had quite a struggle, to be honest, to in this whole process. It was really hard trying to it took a long time to make my decisions this time. I don't know why. With the materials, with the also the final objects, because it's really, yeah, I don't know, out of my regular way of how I create my works. So, and so many aspects were involved, but it was also very interesting and inspiring at the same time.
So, Vipash, what was the idea behind where you put the objects in relation to the space?
Okay. It's a tricky question, I think. You mean just only the object?
Oh, I meant everything. So
You
everything.
mean like everything? You mean it's only the object? I try to make connections. I think the important part is to make connections. To make connection means like not the object, but for a person to see. It's because Mella work was quite process based. So every week we talk, and then we develop. And for me to make, so my task was to think about this exhibition as not, I mean, I can separate things and then make people see I see the work in a different way, but I choose to gather not the object, but the content together. So my whole idea was like, okay, when people come to see, they don't only see, they wouldn't only see object, they would see sketches next to it. They would see the performance next to it. So the whole idea is like to you know, trying to make a little note in every corner of the exhibitions, but then this note also, you know, connect together as well. So in the middle of the exhibition, you also see two attributes together.
Yeah.
That's also another thing that we talked about between me and Mella, and said, well, it's important that they connected. So and then she specifically said, these two should be together. That's something that Mella suggests as well. Yeah.
Yeah, to have a dialogue between some of the objects. And for example, for me, it was a surprise that Vipash separated the videos. I thought, oh, videos go in one series, for example. But I found it very interesting that he split them up, and then because then you have also the dialogue with the drawings and the paintings and everything. Because yeah, I always intend, okay, this is a series, it has to be together. But of course, why it should be together? So I think it's very, in the end, very interesting how you. Yeah,
interesting. Yeah, I don't see series as a medium. I think I see series as like, you know, the same set of like of the whole idea that we, you know, should be in this corner and then another one in another corner. So it was interesting layout actually. One thing I found is that this is the second time I work in this in the gallery, so I somehow knows how it worked beforehand, and yeah, it's interesting to put them together. Not at the space, but actually, you know, from another space on, actually like on the screen. Yeah.
It must have been an interesting experience for both the artist and the curator to curate a show without actually physically being there. So yeah, congratulations.
Yeah, that's true. Also because probably if we did not have COVID, we should have performances in the opening and things like that. So yeah, it's just a different experience this time.
And actually thanks to you as well, Mina, because it's like, it's so hard to feel the space like digitally. So, you know, I need to constantly ask you, how is it? How is it? How is it? Yeah.
It was a good experience working with both of you for sure. I learned a lot in the process about thinking about how to use space. Also, Abdi would like to share a small comment associated with Astala Kusala Kasali and the modern daily living and the connection between the two.
Yes, this is I think useful for everyone. So during our process, this is one of the way we measure the object that you have. So based on your body. So if you would like to buy new shoes, this is one of the way. When I was a kid, I found this. So use this one from this part of your hand and then to the top of your middle finger, and then once you have a shoes, you do this. You put this together. Sorry, from your end of your thumb to end of your point finger, and then once you have it, sorry. Here, you put like this, and you put like this, all the way. Once you reach the end, that's your size of your feet. So this is a little bit bigger than my feet. And then the way to measure your hip or jeans or whatever, pants, especially, it's just put it on your neck. Once it's reach each other, up, that's the size of your pants. So I found it has a strong connection between how we see our body and then how we see object and how to connect with this object, and then it's always about to have things effectively and efficiently. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, Abdi.
Is Siska also in here?
Yes, she is. I think.
She's here.
Hi,
Yeah.
Siska.
Hi.
Can you share a bit about the idea of the weight related to
You
your...
can speak in Bahasa, Mella will translate it.
Yeah, it's also
Yeah.
possible.
Oke. Karena aku di Mela, please translate.
Yeah.
Karena aku bagiannya adalah berat. Jadi pengalaman yang menarik sekali saat aku berdiskusi beberapa kali dengan Mbak Mel, dan setelah itu mencoba properti yang digunakan pertama kali.
Yeah, for it was interesting to have all the discussions with us, and then when she got the final objects, that was for her interesting.
Ya, awalnya tidak menyangka akan seperti itu bentuk propertinya, karena selama 4 kali kita bertemu, kita selalu berbicara tentang pengalaman masing-masing, dan ternyata menarik sekali ketika itu kita tag tanpa perlu latihan.
Yeah, for her it was a surprise to get the final object after all those discussions, because she had no idea what kind of object I would create for her. And then also this idea that she got that object and then she suddenly had to move without any rehearsal.
Ya, seperti sunting yang dijelaskan oleh Mbak Mel, bahwa itu beratnya 15 kilo, saya merasakan itu lagi di properti yang dibuat oleh Mbak Mel.
Yeah, so when she got my object, she really went back into her experience when she had to carry the 50 kilos of gold on her head during that she had the ritual of the performance of her wedding ritual. So she went back to that side to that time.
Ya, tampak sekali wajah saya tidak menahan beban ya.
Yeah, she feels like her face is very much tense because of the weight and she's afraid that it will fall or anything. So she really goes, yeah. For her, it was a sort of intense way she had to move.
Ya, pengalaman yang sangat menarik adalah ketika memberikan keseimbangan antara berat kiri dan kanan, lalu di samping dan yang di depan kita. Itu perlu kewaspadaan dan kesadaran.
Yeah, she felt that she started to move with the object, that she really was aware about all the space around her. So how to keep the balance between the left and the right and the space in front and in the back.
Mungkin itu saja.
Yeah, that's what she wants to share. Thank you, Siska.
Thank you.
Thank you, Siska.
Thank you. Can we ask Abdi the same questions, like when you confront with when you see the object at first, like what was your reaction?
Can I pass this first to Ari? Ari is also
yes,
here.
Yeah.
Good.
It's kind of like my burning questions for four of you actually.
When like I said, when we had the objects, it's like a new costume that enthusiastically you would like to play with. So I put it as a jam session in improvisation actors training. So it's like it's like a jam session where you just introduce to short lists of ideas where you actually have a free to move, but at the same time you already have in mind what's the border, what's the what's the limit. So for me the limits is the movement of the joints, but somehow the tension is when it comes to be acting or to showing the shape, or when it's come when the associations is getting clear, that's the point where I have to step back and then to destroy things again, and then to make a different gesture or something like that. So during the shootings, I strongly have images of agrarian conflicts where happen everywhere. So farmers getting, no longer have rights on their land, and then occupation or something like that. So it's automatically happen when my body show the shape of this rice is like associated with gun. And then thank you for Mella to not putting that, because that for me also would like to destroy the images of what we work on feminine and masculine. And then it's important for me to stay in this tension, to stay in the gap between to associate or not to associate, to show or not to show, to play or not to play, something like that.
Yeah, during the performance that he did, he sort of, what Abdi told you, like he used this wood construction suddenly as so spontaneously, like it was a gun or something, like he was like sort of starting to shoot around, like do. But then I edited, I cut it out, because for me it was too strong association, So I did not want to have that with the objects. I still want to have a sort of free interpretation as well of what was happening, without going into this kind of maybe a political stuff, or really like suddenly it's very strong association with the gun, for example. So for me that was something to try to avoid. But it's interesting that you had that that you had that association while because you put it on and then let it go again. So when it becomes this structure with a point to the front, then it becomes like a gun. Interesting.
But that's part is really important for us, four of us, Siska, Ari, Febri, and Inyong, including myself, to work with Mella in this part, because this is our new experience to work with visual artists with the material, and then we learn how to see materials in different way, different from the way we see materials from our actor or dancer point of view, as a costume or as an object to play with. So this is like a new step for us as a performance artist, to work with artists from different disciplines.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Maybe Inyong has something, or Ari or Febri?
Yeah. Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Oke, seperti Abdi bilang bahwa saya jauh dari tradisi, tidak seperti Abdi yang mungkin tradisinya lebih dengan tradisi dia lebih dekat.
This is Inyong or Ari, and he says that he's not working with his body or like Abdi. It starts from tradition, so he didn't really grow up in a strong traditional setting.
Jadi ketika saya memulai proyek kolaborasi ini, saya pertama kali adalah langsung bagaimana saya bisa mengukur melalui tubuh saya.
Yeah, for him, this was new to think about the measurement of his own body.
Ya, jadi yang saya temukan adalah beberapa cara dengan langkah, cangkar, cakal, langkah dengan kaki saya atau dengan berapa panjang tangan saya. Jadi semua bagian tubuh saya itu sebagai alat ukur.
Yeah, he really started to think about all the measurements of his body. So one feet or one step, or when the whole length of his body, or the width of his arms and things like that.
Ya, ketika pengambilan video, saya tidak punya ide apapun karena pada saat itu juga saya baru menemui objeknya. Jadi bagaimana saya bermain dengan objek itu, apakah objek itu akan melekat pada saya atau objek itu bentuknya seperti apa, saya belum tahu apapun.
Yeah, when he just was confronted with the objects, he was a bit not confused, but yeah, he was like, how will this work relate to me? And so that was his question, and yeah, so what to do with it?
Ketika bertemu dengan objeknya, jadi yang saya gunakan adalah bisa bagaimana sembari melakukan gerakan, saya juga berpikir mengamati bagaimana benda itu, struktur benda itu.
Yeah, so while he was starting to move, he was also thinking about the structure of the objects itself.
Dan ketika ini seperti saya ketika pada proses eksplorasi di dalam membuat karya pertunjukan.
Yeah, and this is actually also the way how it develops when you work with, when you're in the process of creating a performance.
Ya, jadi proses mengamati tubuh diri, bermain dengan benda-benda, keluar dan masuknya antara saya bermain dengan benda atau saya dengan tubuh saya sendiri.
Yeah, so it's about observing, and then in the same time you're playing with it. And yang terakhir apa? Tadi yang terakhir apa? Yeah, so it's about that process. So it's inside and outside. So you're trying to observe yourself, and in the same time you're doing it and playing with it.
Ya, I think itu, saya kira itu dulu.
Okay.
Terima kasih.
Thank you.
So there is a lot of interplay with the ideas of body and how it translates into construction. And we can see that in your paintings as well, Mella. Yeah, so is there anything else that you guys would like to share about, the ideas of construction and measurement and performance?
No, I think it's just a very simple, maybe it's simple idea, just to go back to this kind of basic essence of our life or something, part of our life, to think about our measurements again. At the same time, it relates to so many aspects in our life which are important, and to rethink about it, I think it's also important. And yeah, it's about this kind of observation. I think it's also in the time that we're living now that we go back to this kind of basic and source and rethink a lot of things. And how do we relate to each other? How do we relate to different aspects around us? And where are we standing? Yeah.
Yeah, these measurements pre-colonization, you know, like pre-traditional
Exactly.
measurements. Yeah.
Yeah.
Vipash, would you like to add anything?
Yeah,
Answer.
it's I enjoy the process. I think the way that we work, it's kind of remind me actually of my one. It's very simple. I think the whole confrontation of the idea is very simple. It's like it's gonna remind me of how my grandma cook. It's very simple thing. It's like the way that she measure everything is by pinch of salt, pinch of this and that, and then my wife would always like puzzles because she's a baker, and then she has, you know, this kind of very precise metric measurements that she need to follow. So it's you know, they always not fight, but then, you know, it's just the two concepts that always happen at home when we visit my grandma. So I'm glad that this kind of, you know, grew and become something bigger than itself, and, you know, have that experience that we can relate to
Yeah.
artists and everyone. Yeah.
In the paintings themselves as well, there's moments of like construction and spontaneity. I'm looking for, sorry, give me a second. I'm looking for the painting where Mela, do you want to talk about that? The dripping and the black and white.
Yeah, not
Yeah.
Yeah.
not very consciously. I was I created this work, and yeah, somehow I always like to show process. So I feel always like my paintings are never sort of really finished things, because while I'm working on it, it just happens, and it's the creation just start when you're working, you know. I cannot never imagine before that I'm going to make this work. So while I'm doing it, it's happening. And then somehow spontaneously this also happened with, okay, I related to time. I created these two hands, this idea of movement, and and then I connected it after I saw that I created this. Then I connected this with this idea of how to express time, and then this is sort of become related to the object that I created to February. Also, this idea that we can measure things only because we have contrasts, because we can combine it with something else, you know. So yeah, this idea like, okay, we have something and then we only can sort of see it or we can grab it because there's something else next to it, you know. So this is, yeah, that this kind of ideas came out of this kind of work where I made this kind of you know, the stick in the middle with the black and the white, as this kind of idea of contrasts, and then the sort of dripping, the idea that there's a material which has this own logics in itself, a sort of natural, you know, every material has its own natural logics, you know. And it has the same with the body. We have only natural logics that we have to process and we have to accept and we have to be aware of. And it's with any material, actually. Oh yeah, this work is about that.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. I think we are actually running out of time. I think we have like 15 minutes before we have to end the session. Does anyone have any questions or anything else to add? I can.
I see one
Hi,
hand.
hi, Amina.
Yeah.
Hi, guys. It's
Hi.
Ismail here, or Easy here. Thank
Hi.
you for the sharing and talking about this project. You know, I actually it reminds me it's not so basic, right? Using our body and limbs as measurement, right? Particularly when we think about what our ancestors had created in the past, right? I mean, they created structures and temples and palaces, right? And ships and jongs, right? Probably using, you know, by measuring using their limbs and their fingers. So at the same time they were able to weave and do intricate weaving and carvings. So it's almost like you're right. Is we perhaps their level of consciousness and awareness is at such a high level, right? Because they can see things. It's not even approximate anymore. Perhaps it's so exacting that they were able to create symmetries and you know, intricacies, right? So so I think this project that you're doing kind of you know, reminds us of their third eye, or their third power, right? To be able to do this, especially in Southeast Asia, we have so much of remnants of old structures. So so that's what my observation, that's my takeaway from what you're doing. So it's not just going back, it's not primitive at all, using in fact I think it's a special kind of a level of consciousness that maybe we should all try to regain, or something like that, right? And the other perhaps second comment that I have is in when you are doing your performance. I understand just now there was no sound, but will there be some music or some sound effects that you are thinking of to complete the performance? And what would be the your source of inspiration or influence for that? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your nice comments. Very interesting. Yeah, I while doing the editing of the video, there's only one video where it has sort of natural sounds, because there was the first video with Abdi where he sometimes pushes the wood together, which creates a certain sound, and the sound of moving the rice. So these were essential for that video. But the other ones, not really. Also because some of them were in the half urban space, so many motorbikes passing by and so on. So, and that sort of distracted the movements and the video for my feeling. So I just decided not to have any sound. I think we are just, yeah, because the whole process was quite fast in this, and we only worked on this particular thing like only 4 months. So I think to add another discipline with music can be very interesting, I think. But yeah, it has to become part of the concepts, and we have to rethink and think how we can add the sounds to that. Yeah, because it's also very interesting to think about sound and time, for example. Yeah. Or sound and weight or things like that. So it's a whole new layer again.
It's a whole new project. Yeah. Well, thank you guys. Exactly. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Anyone else have any comments or questions? You can also write it in the chat and I'll read it out. Okay then. Thank you so much, Vipash and Mella. If there's anything else you would like to add about the size of rice, I'll give it to you guys.
No, thank you very much for this nice discussion. Very happy to hear different comments and different input, and it's very inspiring for my next project again. And thank you so much to creating this platform. Thank you, Vipash, for your nice exchange. Yeah, so thank you for everything.
Thank you both as well. And also the size of rice is the exhibition in Malaysia is going to be extended for another week. So if anyone here wants to come visit, it's by appointment. You can check us out on Instagram and Facebook. Don't miss it because it is very, very well done. And now you know what it's about. You've heard from the dancers and the curator and the artist. So it's pretty special.
Thank you, Amina.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're also going to make a catalog.
Yeah.
So, but we're still working on that. So
Yeah.
Okay.
we hear about it.
Okay. Thank you all so much. I'm going to end the chat now. Bye. Have a nice.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
all. Bye bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.